it's your turn, Cy, to tell us your involvement with polyamory, and just briefly, because we're going to be speaking.
Yeah.
But let's go ahead and have your little.
I'm Mark.
Okay.
I go by the name of Cy or Silas in the furry fandom, and I have lived in a multiple partner relationship since the 1980s, when I discovered that, yeah, it was completely possible to be involved with more than one person and have it work. I didn't set out to do that. It happened. I say I'm polyamorous because I have multiple partners, not because I decided to. And this also gave me the ability to have a really nice house where everybody shares expenses. And eventually led to Rodney and I starting a furry convention. And we used the house as our headquarters to plan things. So now with the recent documentary called The Fandom, people now pretty much are finding out who we were, because we didn't advertise who we were when we were doing conventions. We just did the conventions for everybody to have fun at. So basically, you know, there's the handsome co-founder of the furry fandom and me.
Hey, you're handsome.
So
I blush.
we have been coming to Terry's events ever since I ran into her at, I believe, LostCon. She was putting on a presentation about polyamorous relationships, and I was sitting in the audience going, hey, I've been doing that for years.
Who knew?
Yeah, so that's what I'm all about, pretty much, I guess.
Your turn. Just
Okay.
brief, because you're going to be speaking.
Of course. Yeah. Hi. My name is Rodney. I go by Vincent Fanishly, based on my persona species, which is Mustela Vizon. So Vincent Mink. There we go. I could do an entire talk about why mink, but I won't. Basically, I ran into this guy at a LostCon in 1980. Started hanging around with him at a lot of Fanish conventions, and actually was in love with him for several years before I realized I was in love with him, which is embarrassing, but it's true. But he was involved with a lady when I met him, and when I started getting involved in the relationship, at the time, at least, she was okay with that. So suddenly I find myself in this polyamorous situation, and it's been kind of the same with him ever since. She eventually left, but ever since then, we've been kind of a core, and there've been this long string of men and women in our lives, either living with us or not living with us, which is kind of what we're talking about today. I met Terry again at a LostCon, and again, it sounded like, hey, you know, this is the kind of thing we've been doing. We probably ought to talk about it. So we did. And now, just an FYI, we tell people we've been in a relationship for about 35 years. We say about because, again, we didn't really set a date on it. So for date, we celebrate the day that we met.
That's 42 years, by the way.
Yeah, that's 42 years at this point. So we've known each other for 42 years.
To life, the universe, and everything.
We had hair then.
Yeah. Okay, so my involvement with polyamory, before it was coined in the 90s by our water brothers, Morning Glory and Oberon Zell. I was involved with Stranger to Strange Land when I was 15 years old, and shared water with my first water brother when I was 16, who is still my best friend today, and I'm 68. And we now have a book that will be published in on November 11th, 50 Years of Polyamory in America, A Guided Tour to a Growing Movement, being published by Rowman and Littlefield, which is exactly the publisher we wanted, because that's the one that published Deborah Annapol's books. If I could have picked my publisher out of all the ones that were out there, that would have been it, and we got it. So after being turned down a few times, we got the one we really wanted.
Yay.
Very exciting stuff. And I was in an open marriage with my first husband, and we raised our children in that. And then my second husband, Paul, we were together for 15 years, and we always had an open relationship. We were both met through family synergy, so there was no question that we were going to be in that kind of relationship. And we had a triad for 5 years. That was quite wonderful, and that was a beautiful experience, which was with us for different permutations after that in my life. Marcus was the best man at my wedding to Craig, and was in a triad with us for 14 months, and is still a dear friend. And so everything's been poly for me. And my expectation today is to learn new things, which I just did. I didn't realize you guys had actually known each other for 42 years. I guess I could have counted that if I had tried, but I didn't. And I didn't realize that you didn't know you were in love with Mark for so long of a time either. I thought that was kind of like an immediate realization, but not.
Yeah, no, we literally at one point we just sort of looked at each other and said, "We're in a relationship, aren't we?" Yeah, it seems so. Cool.
Was the sex a clue? Just to
Well, we could sit here talking about all day about what's the difference between sex and a relationship. I mean,
I understand, but
yeah, we've both had sex with people we're not in a relationship with.
I understand that too. But the point is that with all that, with everything else was going on, then when you add that factor, it's like,
Yeah, exactly.
So, I'm poly still, and I have a relationship who's with me today, Elaine, and she has been around for me while my husband goes through the rigors of being in chemotherapy for cancer, which is why we are on Zoom rather than live today. Though, Mark and Rodney are part of our Water Brothers, part of our nest, so they're here, and Elaine, of course. But that's one reason that poly really works, is you can have somebody with you that is, wonderfully supportive and that is there to love when, everything is really messed up. Like, Craig's in chemo for a week out of every 3, basically. So, and at the hospital, a little bit rough. But thank God that I've had people that care about me around me, and especially Elaine right now. And that's where my life is at the moment. Now, Athena, are you joining us today? Would you like to say something about your experience with polyamory and what's happening with you?
Well, most of my polyamory experiences with Paul, and actually pretty much all of it.
most of it.
Yeah,
I'd like to hear about
Well, wait a minute. Don't Craig and I count? I mean, we share a bed and so
Well,
forth.
okay, that's true. Well, okay, well, my initial experience, I mean, if I hadn't met Paul, I wouldn't have any experience.
Right, I know.
That's
But
kind
what
of-
Craig says when I ask this question is, all my experience with polyamory is Terry, but this isn't true anymore. We've
No.
been together for 4 years, and he's had, it doesn't have to be sexual. It can just be
Yeah.
warm, caring, sharing somebody. We share Paul. So, this is definitely poly.
That's
And
true.
I love you. So I think this counts,
Okay. Yeah, well, okay. Yeah, okay. Well, there you go. Terry just kind of laid it out for us. And, yeah, I mean, that's,
She's good at that.
yeah, I mean, prior to that, I mean, I don't know, I read a lot of Heinlein, when I was
Yes.
in my early 20s.
First time I met you, 2011, I knew that you were,
So,
that was Thanksgiving of 2011.
Anyway, good stories. Yeah, so that's kind of the deal. But I have, of course, lots of other things going on in my life that don't involve Polly, but but I don't mean these.
As do we all,
Yeah.
yes. All right.
But yeah, this is, I don't know, I'm in the process of making something for a car, which I'm going to sell.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So,
All right, so, let's see, got her, your turn.
My turn. Okay. So I'm Elaine. I'm transgender. I've also been poly off and on. I guess you could say I've had my first poly experience when I was around 19, 20 years old. But then because of my gender identity issues and stuff, I kind of was working those issues and kind of put my, sexual identity issues on the shelf and stuff. So it was probably, I was monogamous monogamous marriage for about 18 years. And then in no kind of relationships with anybody really for another 18 years while I was, working on transition. And basically once my transition was complete, then I felt that I could kind of just go out and be a person, I guess, in the universe and start having friendships and relationships and stuff. So that's what I've been doing the last few years is, starting to just build up and get social again. So,
Pardon my asking, but when, in your mind, when do you feel like your transition was finished?
when I had surgery,
Which was
about
how long ago?
that was about 3-4 years ago. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so now we're going to go ahead and do the presentation part, and I can do this as I can interview you guys, or you could just speak.
Well, I certainly wouldn't mind having questions put to me because, I can talk on any number of things, but,
That's true.
I wouldn't mind having the.
That's like asking me to talk on hypnosis. I
Exactly.
could do that for the next 5 hours at
Right.
least. All right, so I will have a question. Let's start with the question of, for you, you live in a group house, you, Rodney, live in a group house, and you share space with, of course, Mark, and with other people,
Right.
some of whom are connected to Mark and to you.
Yes.
What do you think is the most wonderful thing you get out of that?
Oh, somebody who gets all the jokes.
Somebody who gets all the jokes. Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that's one thing that's cool about all coming from a Fanish background is
Yes.
we have all of our own, all the reference material is in the head, so we get all the jokes.
I have said it before, but
That's my life too. I don't want to be with somebody that doesn't even know who Heinlein is.
right, exactly. We are, we've done a lot of talks in the past at various LGBT presentations and stuff like that. But the simple fact of the matter is, we are very loudly nerds first and LGBT people far second. So you hang with us for a period of time. If you're coming from outside, you're not going to say, "Oh, what a nice gay couple." You're going to say, "What a couple of geeks." Exactly. So the community part of our household has always been about fandom, and the interactive part about our relationships, our actual poly relationships, has always been about fandom. All of our people that we have been in relationships with, him, me, and the two of us together, have been through Fanish connections. So just being surrounded by people with a similar mindset is tremendous. It's a wonderful thing to come home to.
Oh, and with all the mention of people meeting at LostCon and everything, that's where I met my husband too, at LostCon, behind the space table, of course. And if we couldn't talk about science fiction and he didn't know what I was talking about, we wouldn't be together. So
Yeah. So, if nothing, like I say, if nothing else, it's a marvelous community to come home to, and so we all need a rest from the rest of the world at the moment. I mean, we always do, but it's been especially fun lately. So, again, it's nice to come home to that. And this guy has, done everything he can to, we're a community and we're a group and all that, but at the end of the day, this guy has the pink slip on the piece of property. So it's his house, and he has done, a marvelous job of, providing us with not just a roof over our heads, but a space where we can be ourselves, and a space where we can feel safe and feel confident, and et cetera, et cetera. And we all,
Creating a nice nest for y'all.
Thank you. That's the right word I was looking for. Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. The mama bird, and all of us little chicks.
I'll regurgitate something.
Okay, thank you.
So now what do you get out of doing all of that for these people and for yourselves?
Well, I discovered I was kind of displaced by just circumstance when I was young. I couldn't make friends because I kept traveling across the country with my dad, who was in the Navy, as he got stationed in various places. And so I would be, I didn't even get through all of kindergarten in one state. I started at a Catholic kindergarten in St. Louis, which was a super advanced kindergarten for the 1950s. I mean, I learned how to use a telephone and even how to use a telephone switchboard in kindergarten.
Wow.
You got your geek cred early, I guess.
Pretty much. So then we moved to New York, and I ended up in a public kindergarten, finished kindergarten with a cap and gown ceremony. I don't think they do that anymore. Got a diploma and had the mortarboard, and
Wow.
bowed to everybody, and the mortarboard fell on the floor with a loud bang. It's like, and then I went into first grade in New York. We lived in Long Island until the ocean came in to visit us, and we said, no more of that. We moved to this little community called Rosedale, which was a suburb. And I think I got through first grade, and then we moved again, all the way across country to California, because my mother had rheumatoid arthritis, and we got what they call a hard luck transfer in the Navy. They found a position for my dad in Southern California. So we moved there in 1958.
So that was probably a key point in your life.
Oh, yeah.
But the point is that move. I was kind of a similar situation with my dad, because, well, to me, it was just my dad kept changing jobs. But the fact of the matter is, we both had a little bit of a problem kind of, forming long-term friend relations, because
Yeah, that's me too. We moved in the Southern California area, but we kept moving and moving and moving, and it didn't seem
But to bring it back to the thing, I didn't become the comfortable loner. I wanted friends. I wanted people around me, and it was difficult. And so,
and how beautifully you managed.
when I discovered the
project.
fandom, very long-term project, I suddenly had an easier place to make friends because of shared interests. And that's how I eventually, I lived with my parents a long time because it was a comfortable situation. I didn't have a partner. I had a girlfriend for a while it was very nice, but I wasn't forced to move out. There was no deadline about you gotta get out of the house, by this time. I got an apartment, and several other people I'd known got apartments in the same complex. So we had this little gulag of fan apartments.
It takes a village.
Yeah.
And at some point I said to the people who were there, I said, we could save a lot of money if we rented a house together. So through the mother of the person who's now currently my boss, who was a friend of mine then. She found this place in Garden Grove that a couple owned and were renting out. It was investment property. They were
What
renting
year
out.
is this now?
That was 1983.
1983.
So I went and looked at it, and it was a very strange house. It had been a little 3-bedroom house with 2 baths, and then they had knocked the side and the back wall out and expanded the house by adding like 2 family rooms attached to the living room, all open space.
Important side note. What's the great secret of polyamorous great households? Big living rooms
And attached dining room.
and attached dining
What
rooms.
they call great rooms nowadays. They didn't have that term then. But it turned out that the people who were trying to rent the property could not get tenants in there who wanted to stay because of the strange layout. It was exactly what we wanted.
Yes.
So I said, hey, we're in here for the long term. And, they had these handymen that came over to take care of the property, and they were really flaky. So I called her up on the phone and I said, okay, from now on, do not send these people here anymore. We will take care of the house and send you the bill. And they said, fine. So my father unfortunately passed away from cancer, and there was an inheritance there. We weren't not a rich family, but there was an inheritance there to be used as a down payment on a house right about the time that the people who owned the house discovered that their way they'd financed it had this ridiculous balloon payment at the end of the thing that they couldn't afford.
Very popular back then.
And they said, do you want to buy the house? I said, yeah. So I bought it from her. And the way it worked is everybody paid rent, not a lot of rent,
Especially for Southern
for
California.
California, and that paid the house payment. And so,
And we each
you know,
have a
what
Each have a what?
polyamory did for me was it gave me having people around all the time, which I love.
Yep, me too.
They don't have to be right next to me. They can be in the next room, but they're there.
Yep.
And this wonderful house and property that I could not have afforded by myself, even with a down payment, with the job I had. I've never really made a lot of money. And then, of course, when we got it started in furry fandom, we became really poor then, again, because
Yes, great way to become poor. Start conventions.
start a convention. So as far as me looking for partners to get involved with, I didn't do that. I learned in school, especially in high school, that I was not a valid person to have a relationship with.
Why?
I was an untouchable because I was a nerd. I wasn't into sports. I didn't fit in any of the molds of desirable people.
But you were science fiction fandom.
Not then.
Oh, you weren't. Okay.
Science fiction fandom snuck up on me. Okay. I was completely unaware there was even a thing called fandom. And I went to a Star Trek convention, which was one of those saved Star Trek conventions right after the show was canceled. And
I helped get a 3rd season, but
I didn't know
petitions.
anything about fan conventions. Me and my best friend, David Bass, saw an ad on TV for the Star Trek convention in Los Angeles. And we said, hey, let's go check it out for a day, see what it's like. And I went there.
What year was this?
1971, I think.
1971.
And even then, they had, with that convention, it wasn't the big one in New York, they had so many people there that they had this giant cantilevered mezzanine where the meeting rooms were, and they wouldn't allow people to just fill it up. They were afraid of structural damage. So they had somebody at the escalators, if 5 people came down, they'd let 5 people go up. There was that many people at this little hotel.
Oh.
I went into a room and there was the bridge of the Enterprise. Beautiful. You know, I'm going,
Yum.
this is amazing,
Yeah.
you know, because I love that show. And one of the staff people was there, and I said, wow, it's amazing you got Desilu to loan you this set. And he goes, oh, didn't you hear? They had a fire at Desilu and the set was destroyed.
They recreated
And I
it
said,
that well.
Where'd this come from? Oh, we made it. I said, what do you mean we made it? Oh, the people at the convention, we all got together, we built parts in our garages, and it all fits together, and here it is. It's like, and oh, it's funny, the studio actually borrowed the set to do commercials from us.
I love it.
And I'm going, they built this whole set just because they felt like it.
Burning Man before Burning Man.
That was my discovery of the fandom. I kind of went out scratching my head going, wow, that's amazing. And after that, I started going to more conventions. I was never one of those people who wanted to go to conventions to get things signed by famous people. One of the things I loved to do at conventions was see science fiction movies without commercials breaking them up all over the place. And back then they would rent 16 millimeter films and have like 3 screening rooms. They'd run, you know, complete science fiction films 24/7. I was the nerd in school, even in grade school, that ran the projector.
Me too.
So I went to the volunteer booth and said,
And a Star Trek convention brought you to Southern California, if I remember
They
correctly.
said, what can you do? I said, I can run projectors. They said, great. So I started running projectors, and before the first convention was over, I became the head of the projection department because I could teach people how to run projectors, and they always were running short of people to help. And I came up with this brilliant rule because the hotels were very strict about how many people could get in a room. And a lot of these films were popular, and there was probably 5,000 people at this convention. This was B. Joe Trimble's
Oh, yeah.
FilmCon.
FilmCon, Equicon FilmCon.
Yeah.
So I told the people who are on my projection crew, I said, you want to see a film? You just walk in there and say, I'm a backup projectionist. And this was the perk that got me my projectionists, because they could see any film they wanted, whether the room was full or not.
That's great.
There were some films where there were 8 backup projectionists standing up on
Should never have enough.
the stage.
You know, those projectors are pretty finicky. You never know when that loop would you'd lose the loop, and you'd have to go in there before you'd start ruining the rental film.
That was my hook, and then eventually, of course, videotape happened, and the acceptance of home video equipment was slow. They were damned expensive. People were confused about how they worked. I had one very early, and so I started bringing it to conventions. That's where I ran into a little bit of brick wall, because televisions were not considered to be valid things at literary science fiction conventions. Even though you could have a video room to replace the screening room, because all of a sudden 16 millimeter rental became a non-thing. They weren't doing it anymore. So the video rooms took over, and I was right there at the forefront showing videos in my own room because the convention didn't want that.
That's like you showed that you did that of the furry stuff.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the furry stuff was a big repeat of what he wound up doing with a lot of science fiction stuff and a lot of Japanese anime stuff.
Yeah,
You know,
but
I
that's
didn't
a whole-
realize that.
that's a whole other story.
Yeah, that we cover that extensively. Look up the fandom on YouTube. He covers that extensively.
Yeah.
But I want to drag this around to. We're not just talking about fanish experiences here. We're talking
Oh my
more
God, I
specific.
referred to that as the movement instead of the fandom.
It's okay.
I'll fix it. I'll send out something.
It's
Oh,
okay.
Shoot.
It's called the movement. Well, that's the disco movie. I was.
I think I did that.
No,
I
no,
really blew it.
it's okay. But anyway, the subject today we are discussing here is poly experiences for LGBT people. So, in addition to which poly experiences for LGBT people, I find are quite often very similar to fandom experiences for LGBT people. You know, we're both, you know, heavily involved in furry fandom, and we've you know, the numbers vary based on different studies, and of course they're somewhat skewed because most of the studies that have been done have taken place at conventions. And of course, when you're studying fandom at a convention, you learn more about conventions than you learn about the fandom, because not everyone in a fandom goes to a convention. Which is a long-winded way of saying I don't know if these are the exact numbers, but I do know that there is heavy evidence that in furry fandom, there is a greater representation of LGBT people in general than there is in the quote-unquote normal populace, and especially there is an extremely higher percentage representation of trans folk in fur fandom than there is in the general population.
Oh, I didn't realize.
Oh yeah,
that.
no, it specifically it says that in the fandom, the numbers they give, again, this is based on some studies, so you know you have to study the efficacy of the study, but according to the studies, roughly 0.5% of the population of the United States self-identify as trans, according to this study. The last study they did in furry fandom, up to 12% of people in the
A lot
fandom
more, yeah.
self-identify as trans, and it's like, whoa.
Well, if you're willing to identify as another species,
Yes.
identifying as a different gender is not, it's not that big a leap.
Questioning your species, you know, question your gender too.
Yeah. So that's been our, you know, we said it before. We never set out when we started, you know, organizing furry fandom. We never set out to, you know, we never looked at each other and said, "Hey, let's set up a safe space for LGBT people." It just wound up being that.
Yeah, it became that. And when the people who were doing the documentary came to our house the first time, we were sitting there, and they stood kind of behind us, just beaming and going, "It's wonderful you started this safe space for LGBT plus people." And Rod and I went, "We did?"
So
You didn't have any judgments against it, so
No,
that
yes,
probably was part of it.
well, no, that was,
Just a
I
safe
mean,
space by default. Yeah.
we were, by the time we got to around to organizing for fandom, we were, you know, already out by cis men already. So it made perfect sense to us. Why the heck would we restrict anything? You know, but you know, again, we could go into this story.
Well, it's
forever.
beyond not restricting. It's, you know, it was like, that was perfectly fine. Yeah, there was nothing shocking about anybody being trans or whatever.
Right. Well, that's what I mean by not restricting. We didn't, you know, it's like, oh, cool, come on in. You know,
Yeah.
you're into cartoons the way we are. Cool, come on in.
The important thing was that they were into what you were into, and it didn't much matter. Oh, trans isn't that interesting. Come on in. Are you interested in this cartoon or whatever? Yeah.
So so the whole LGBT thing was kind of accidental, but it wound up being very important. And you know, since the movie came out, we have, you know, at conventions, we have perfect strangers coming up to us and, you know, thanking us profusely for, you know, helping them through their, you know, realization of their gender identity or their sexuality and so on and so forth. And we're like, okay, cool.
I don't think I've run across quite as many people when I was in science fiction fandom and going to comic conventions too, and quite so many people telling me they're in a polyamorous relationship. It's like the big meeting place for the furries who can afford the equipment or know about it is this place called VR Chat, which is essentially a social environment that's in virtual reality. And I run into people pretty much almost every night that are part of a polyamorous group.
Oh, that's
If
interesting.
that comes up in the conversation, it's like,
Now, we
That's
should mention-
very interesting.
my two mates, this is,
We should mention about, at this point about demographics, of course. One of the things about furry fandom compared to comic book fandom and science fiction fandom is the demographic in furry fandom tends to skew a lot younger still. I mean, there's a large and hearty gray muscle community at this point, but the fact of the matter is, I think the mean average age in fur fandom still is about 25, 26. So, in addition to the other things we could go into about, the comfort and, the sense of community and all that, the simple fact of the matter is, for a lot of young people, it's nice to have, it's economically sensible to have a community you can
Oh,
be a part
David.
of.
Hi, David.
Oh, still connecting to audio. Bing, bing.
David, we can't hear you, hon.
You're not connected yet. 1 second. There you go.
There it goes. Yeah, I'm sitting waiting for plaster to dry, so, which means I probably won't be able to make it by there, but I want, since I'm not doing anything else.
You're watching plaster dry. How exciting.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, before exciting than a meeting, you gotta go watch Faster Drive. I think I've just been massively insulted here.
Wait. Are you telling us you're plastered?
I mean, the wall is plastered and it's really wavy.
David,
He can identify.
I will have I will have Paul send you a recording of all the stuff that you missed that you would have found interesting. So tell us, at least since you're here, about your involvement with polyamory and bisexuality and that sort of thing.
Oh my, big story. Let's see. Been around poly my entire life. I'm trying to find my power cord. The reason I'm fishing around here. Which means
Yeah, your dad was poly. I remember talking to him in the hot tub at Elysium. I said, your dad was poly. I remember talking to him in the hot tub at Elysium.
Yeah, so I've been around it my entire life and been in and out of it myself personally my entire life. Always enjoyed it, very comfortable with it. I think I found my cord. There we go. I don't want this to die while I'm trying to talk to you guys. Let's see. So, let's see, polyamory, nudist also, of course. So, well, that definitely my entire life since I was a small child, since my father was also a nudist.
Likewise.
Yeah, who am I talking to anyway here? You should introduce me because I've seen your face. But
Oh, don't you know Mark and Rodney?
I've seen you at some events before, but I probably not really often. I'm Rodney, Rod O'Reilly. This is Mark Merlino, AKA Vincent Mink, Silas Sable.
Mhm.
They're the founders of Furry Fandom, David. You've seen them before, I'm sure.
I know I've seen them, but like I said, I don't really know them. It's nice to get a proper introduction and reacquaint my brain with who they are.
Likewise.
So this is Elaine,
I'm Elaine. Hi.
and Elaine is the lady in my life who is very important to me at the present time and ongoing, I think.
Yeah.
Shared water with her, and she's somebody I want you to, have a chance to get to know. I was hoping to get her to come to the Memorial Day weekend at Olive Dell, but she has something else going on.
Oh.
But,
Yeah.
one of these days we'll definitely get together.
Yeah, that would be nice. All things in their own time, as you know. So where was I and what was I telling you?
You were talking about your involvement with LGBTQ community and polyamory.
Oh yeah, many LGBTQ. I never can get those letters out, but
Me either.
not heavily involved in that community, but always been around it and available to it. And I'm by myself. People have been pushing me to change that to something more contemporary, but I'm happy with bi.
Yeah, the gentleman on here with us says he's pansexual. I don't see the difference between that and bisexual. I'm not sure I get it.
Well, I can kind of answer that from my own perspective, because I know from years of discussion that I am a bisexual cis male, and this guy with me is more of a pansexual cis male. The basics being that as a bisexual, I am sexually attracted to cis men and cis women. In this case, in my personal case, equally. I'm a dead center bi. Okay.
Mhm.
Pan means attracted to all genders, meaning men, women, gender fluid,
Mhm.
whatever. Okay. So it's not it has nothing to do with there's no judgment involved. It's just what my eyes do.
Mhm.
There's no value judgment in it. It's just, what turns me on
Mhm.
when I'm being turned on is cis men or cis women. Whereas this guy, he's done a lot of artwork of what they call intersex characters,
Right.
and hermaphroditic characters and things like that over the years. So he's much more into that than I am. I'm most.
This is really important to me what you've just said, because I couldn't figure out what they were talking about, because now I realize what I'm talking. I'm actually, by that definition, bisexual. I'm attracted to cis or trans women, men, as long as they're identifying as something. But I'm not interested in gender fluid people. People that don't have any, not gender fluid so much as they say they don't have any gender. They're not male or female. I'm not interested in those people.
Well, even regardless of the reality of the real world reality, the fact of the matter is, long before I had much of an involvement with anything other than this guy, we were looking at a lot of artwork, both anthropomorphic and, being in science fiction fandom, a lot of just plain human types, at least, and elves and such. And I discovered that, drawings of nice looking men, I like. Drawings of nice looking women, I like. Drawings of hermaphroditic characters, which were very, very common. They didn't squick me. It wasn't ew, but it was just kind of okay. It didn't create that sort of response for me. He's much more into that than I am. And again, no value judgment there. It's just, that's where our brains go.
You know what? Thank you. I really didn't understand something inside of me that clarified. Thank you.
Yeah, and I want to just kind of add a point to that. I have a tendency to identify as both bi or pan. And to me, pan is more along the lines of I'm attracted to the person for the person, and the gender really doesn't come into the play. It's the attraction to the person.
Yeah. In
Okay,
some
so-
respects,
Yes, go ahead.
All right, so it has nothing to do with being attracted to cookware.
Oh, that too.
Or,
I mean, yes,
or hairy goat people, or hairy goat people. Okay, I just want to make sure. I wasn't sure. Fuzzy on I'm fuzzy on these things, so Okay.
Thank you, Athena.
Chris, you had a question?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to comment that I identify as pansexual. I was identifying as bisexual from kind of my sexual awakening, my first sexual awakening. When I fell in love with a trans woman, that was when I reevaluated and found the term pansexual, and that's why I identify as pansexual. I found myself, like Elaine, attracted to the person first, and gender for me is kind of inconsequential. But being a furry, I'm also attracted to hairy goat people.
Likewise, I'm sure, especially if their name is Toriel or Asriel. Yeah, Chris, you weren't here for that, but I had mentioned to them earlier that this guy came up with a marvelous. Since both of us are of the strong opinion that furry fans are born, not made. So when people ask me, how long have you been a furry fan? I say, since I came out of my mom. But he said this guy came up with a marvelous little litmus test for are you a furry fan or not, or have you ever been? And it's who was your first crush?
It does.
And my answer, I realized I was bisexual when I realized that I had fallen in love with Disney's Robin Hood and Maid Marian in equal measure. Okay, so
For me, it was Balto.
Oh no! Oh man, there were a lot of people. Balto and Jenna, both of them. A lot of people I know were just at the movie theater, just like.
Yeah, with me, it was Bambi and Feline, and then later it was Kimba the White Lion and his partner Kitty. They were both cubs, so they weren't like in a relationship. They were just friends, but I like both of them. But my very, very, very first crush was Astro Boy, who's a robot. So I guess that triggered that was where the pan thing came from.
There you go.
Well, this has been really instructive today. I can definitely learn things from meetings I put together.
Did it.
All right. So because part of this is about being trans too. Elaine, can you share with us why it took the operation to make you feel fully transitioned and like you could become social again?
Well, I mean, kind of in a nutshell, I mean, the aspect of me being trans has always been that, I'm a woman stuck in a man's body, basically what it boiled down to. And it just seemed like while I had the man's body or in the men's genitalia, I just did not feel like a woman. And so, for a lot of years, I did just kind of thought, okay, I just transition and live life as a woman and that'll be fine. But once I actually started living life as a woman, that wasn't enough. I needed to have the surgery to be complete. And it just seemed like then once I had the surgery and healed up, then it was just like a switch went off. And I felt like a woman then. And so then I could, not only maybe engage in relationships, but I could also socialize and have a social network as a woman, rather than, as something that's, in between, I guess, or something, something that I wasn't comfortable with,
So how do you, I used to wonder, and I think I understand it better now being in it, but how do you find it different being trans and having a relationship with a woman and being a man and having a relationship with a woman?
Yeah, there's a big difference because, well, and how to describe that though? Because being a man and having a relationship with a woman, yeah, it's a different set of dynamics. And I think a lot of it has to do with the gender identification.
Really?
Yeah. At least for me as a man, I was never really comfortable as a male gender having a relationship with a woman. I was never comfortable with that. And for that matter, I had explored relationships with men, and I was just never comfortable with that either, because I just wasn't in the gender that I felt comfortable in. Once I transitioned to being female, though, then it just became a moot point. I felt comfortable either way, either as a woman. mainly because of socialization as a male, that, I think having relationships with women was, was kind of socialized into me and stuff. I think if I had been born as a woman to begin with, I probably would have just been a straight woman, is my guess. But I'm only guessing based on incomplete data, I suppose.
Who's got complete data?
I know.
Don't I wish? Sorry.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. I just, for me, from my perspective, I was never comfortable with my sexuality as a man. But once I became a woman, then it was fine. And so trying to draw that comparison of what it was like as a man versus as a woman now, I don't know that it would
It sounds like
necessarily
it was
apply to
what's inside
men.
of you.
Yeah.
It's what's inside of you.
I can't speak. Well, I certainly can't speak from my own experience. So I want to state that first and foremost. And I have no idea how much of a slice of the demographic I'm looking at here. So I'm nervous saying this, but I will say that I have spoken to several trans friends of mine in the past, and to them, as far as they're concerned, their gender identity and their sexual orientation are two completely different orbits.
No, completely, yes.
So, you have a born man in a relationship with a born woman, and then the born man decides that his gender identity is incorrect, and he decides to transition to becoming a woman. And you ask, how did your relationship change? And that woman will say, not at all. I'm still the person they loved. They're still the person that I love. That relationship has not, the only thing that's altered in it is me.
Yeah, and that works. Unfortunately,
I
that's
agree with
all
that
the time.
100%. Yeah.
But you had the situation where your wife was not comfortable with staying.
Oh yeah, my wife had. I mean, when we got married, and when I came out as trans, yeah, we separated, and basically she wanted a man in her life. She was not. She was not interested in having a woman in her life. That was just the bottom line. She wanted a man. And
That's not what she signed up for.
Yeah, that she did not sign up for that. So that's why we wound up separating, because that's not what she signed up for, and she never could make jump that bridge, cross that bridge. So
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that happens to a lot of couples.
yeah,
There was the lady that does these talks, Leanna had a talk.
What?
Leanna Wolf. Yeah, she had a talk on men who, not even trans, but just men who like to dress up as women, and their wives just, so many of their wives just freak out, and it's really difficult to find people that are open-minded enough to work with that. So
Now, me being the way that I work psychologically, what I like to do is I like to find the stories where that doesn't happen.
yeah,
Where it does work out and they are okay with it, and then go, okay, so what do we find in common there?
yeah,
It's just like the old Stanley Milgram thing. People say, oh, people are so terrible. Look, they'll do anything that an authoritarian figure tells them to do, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. There was a percentage of the people in the Milgram test who didn't do that.
Yeah.
What do those people have in common?
That's
the
what I-
interesting part to me.
that's what I want to know. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Like Terry and I.
there's, I'm a child of divorce, so, but, there's a lot of stories out there in human society about relationships that don't work out. That's easy, for crying out loud, the entire music industry is based on it. I know, I write country music, but What I'd like to know is when things do work out, what went right? And that's true in either straight or LGBT relationships, you know. And then of course, we're not kidding anybody, poly relationships, you know, more ingredients in the soup.
Yeah,
The
Yes.
dynamics get complicated.
yeah.
So when it does work out, not only is it wonderful, but I like to, you know, scientifically know what went right.
I think that's a good point. I think maybe there should be a book on the subject.
Yeah.
You know, I think
Time to
possibility
start writing.
is being comfortable with yourself.
I
And
think that's-
I got very confused about people, you know, doing the, you know, you can't love anybody till you love yourself. And, you know, confidence is the thing that's going to actually get you somewhere over having a great IQ or being a really skilled athletic person. You've got to have confidence. And I used to get confused because I'm going, okay, I don't like myself sometimes. I don't like what I do sometimes. I don't like what I think sometimes. But I had to separate that. I think I have to separate that from confidence. I am a confident person at the base. You know, I can handle things. You know, I can handle things at work. I used to use the scene as an example, the scene in Ghostbusters where Zool goes, you know, are you a god? And I think as Ray goes, well, no. And Zool goes, then die. Okay. And Venkman, I think,
No, the
says-
black guy. Yeah.
says to him, when somebody asks you if you're a god, say yes. So I've taken that to heart
He is.
in work, and it's like, you know, one says, okay, here's this job that you've got to do. Can you do this job? I go, yeah, I can do that. Even if I may have feelings about, I don't know if I can learn that, or if I, you know, if I can catch up or keep up or whatever. I say yes first because a part of me believes I can do anything.
Bravo.
Now I will say
I
that
got the same idea when it's hypnotherapy. If somebody says, can you do this? Well, usually it turns out that over 50 years, I know I can do it. But if it's something that I don't know, I think about it for a minute and say, yes, I can do that. I've just thought of a way to do it, you know?
now it's an interesting thing about the whole LGBT thing for us, I think, is
Can I move that computer? Will I be able to see Paul? Would I
Okay,
have to-
I can do that.
oh yeah, you're small. Okay. We quite well, first off, Mark and I have never been big activists, I would say, in the
Perfect.
LGBT rights thing.
Thank you.
I mean, obviously we support it and so on and so forth, but we've never really been big activists in it. We don't, you know, go to rallies and all that stuff like that. What we did with our relationship is we just kind of automatically and without thinking about it, normalized it. You know, it's like, you know, oh, I'm in love with a man. Okay. You know, and we just went on about our lives. And it's amazing the amount of crap that can be thrown at you that kind of washes over you when, as far as you're concerned, it's like, what are you carrying on about?
This is the correct link, right?
You know,
Code and.
that's been my experience anyway.
Okay.
That,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah,
Well, we certainly tried to normalize it. It was a little difficult because the whole heterosexual thing is just so ingrained, particularly
It was
in
from
Western.
what was posted on the
society.
news.
well, no. I mean, don't get me wrong. We got blowback. I mean, we lost friends when people started realizing that we were in that kind of a relationship. We lost friends, and I'm talking about in fandom. You know, people who we thought we were close to, who suddenly, you know, weren't returning our phone calls and such. And you know, me being me, it took me a long time to click. Oh, they don't like that we're bi. Okay, well, whatever.
And you know, my problem with it was was there was never an equality. Quite often in work, I would have a situation where there'd be a situation where somebody's wife was more important than work that had to be done, and it was completely okay. It's like, understand, that's your wife. Whereas with me, it was like if I had some family issue going on, that wasn't important because I wasn't actually married to a woman.
Right.
It wasn't an issue. It's just there's this guy you live with. That's not the same thing.
Right.
And that kind of stuff really bugs me. It's just like bisexual erasure really bugs me. And one of the problems that we've had in dealing with people starting to recognize us for who we are and going, oh my God, these guys made, the furry fandom a safe place for LGBT, and it was great. This gay couple that started furry fandom, it's like, no. We're bi. Yes, I have a gay mate, gay partner, but we're bi. Don't erase us, because I think it's important. But the very fact that, people who have an attraction for gender that they're not supposed to by the rules, whoever made those up, have been spending time, there's been years and years of effort to prove that it's not a choice. It's not actually a choice. You don't just wake up one day and go, I'm going to like guys instead of women. Or I'm going to like other women instead of guys. It's like something inside you that's the way you are. And when you come to bisexual people, they go, oh, that can't be. You can't possibly be automatically attracted to both genders equally, or even in a percentage. You're either, heterosexual pretending because it's cool, or so you can get more dates, or you're a gay who's self-hating and trying to hide the fact
I got
that they're
all
gay.
of that stuff about being bi, and I was the one who had the the loudspeaker that says "We are the LGBT" in one of the gay pride parades. And if I could choose, I think you may be right about being that way when you're born, because I certainly had it from an early age.
Me too.
But if I could choose, I love being bi. I think being bisexual is a blessing. And Paul and I at one point had we decided we only wanted bi people in our lives, because why should we have the aggravation of a straight that couldn't accept one of us, or whatever. And that was actually a good decision, I think.
And I actually think there are probably a lot more people who would say they're bi and recognize their bisexuality if there wasn't this stigma.
I remember years ago, I used to listen to talk radio a lot, and I went to this show, and anyway, the station had a booth there, and this guy, who was gay, by the way, was sitting there, okay, and he would repeatedly say on the air that bisexuals don't exist, okay. If you're into guys, then you're really gay, and blah blah blah. He'd go all this stuff. So I made a point to walk up to him and I said, hey, nice to meet you. I shook his hand and says, so you can feel my hand, right? Yeah. So you can see me, right? So I do exist, right? Well, yeah. Well, then you keep saying on the air that I don't exist. So I wish you did it straight.
I made the observation years ago that bisexuals are the only group on the planet where people will tell you to your face you don't exist.
Yeah.
But Boston Worldcon, I think about 25 years ago, this guy was on a panel discussion with about bisexuality, specifically bisexuality in science fiction fandom. And the lady there who was running the thing had a couple of wonderful first off, she said, I don't believe that people are naturally bisexual. I believe you have to earn it. But she also said, I've been doing this for 30 years. I get tired of being told I'll work it out eventually.
Indeed.
Yeah, my sarcastic statement to people who go, they can't understand how someone could be bisexual, I say, you just haven't met the right person yet.
Right.
Yeah, there's a point.
But
So,
go ahead.
oh, no, go ahead.
Well, I mean, I was just going to drag this around to, again, throwing ingredients in the soup. I am sure in your long experience, you have run into households and probably even specifically relationships, not just, where people are living together, but are actually involved with each other,
Yeah.
where there is a mixture of straight
Oh, yes.
and bisexual
Absolutely.
and gay
The
people.
Ravenhearts were like that. The over on Zell's group marriage.
Well, since we're talking, the subject said LGBT and polyamory. What was that like?
Well, I wasn't in that, but
But I
I
know, I
certainly
mean,
observed it.
What did you see?
There were anybody who was in the marriage had a relationship with everybody else, from friendship to sexuality to deeply in love and whatever, but they didn't all have all of those relationships with everybody in the group.
Right.
And there were as many as 8 people at one time who were, definitely marital partners.
Wow.
And some of them were, just straight, and some of them were bi, probably more bi than straight there. And they just, they loved each other as spouses, and some of them chose to share sexuality with each other, and some of them did not. And that was like just a thing they decided between them. But if there was room for all of it, as long as you had let's say you're existing in a pool and you've got lots of people in the pool, they're all surrounded by water, they're all surrounded by love. And some of them choose to have sex and some of them don't,
Yeah. Well, I love everyone who is living in our household currently to some extent. Just some of it is, the love of humanity, and some of it is this guy. And in between.
I when people ask me, about they do these diagrams of different relationships, and I say our normal relationship is a Y, with me and Rodney being the trunk and the other partners being the branches. And I'm in the middle because in most cases there's a sexual link between those, and otherwise everybody's friends with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's,
I think you call that a star.
Is it?
A star path. That's a
That
poly
sounds
thing.
right. That sounds right.
Yeah, a star relationship, or a radial relationship.
but normally it, I always have Rodney and me being the trunk that supports the whole thing. And that
seems like a very good description in this case,
That
whether star is
diagram-
one of the descriptions or
that
not.
diagram has been my stable situation for many years, although the other two branches have changed. The people involved in the other two branches have changed. And recently, a partner that I've had for 20 years, they left the family, got married, and is living in another state, with a woman who already had 2 kids.
Which one was that?
That's Bill.
Oh, Bill left.
I don't know
okay.
if you
I know
met
who Bill
him.
is.
He was
Of
the
course.
newest person in our relationship, but for 20 years.
Right,
So that's,
yes.
we're always long-term stuff. And he decided he'd met this person online, and he decided that he'd fallen in love with them, and he really wanted to be a dad. He really wanted to have a family. And so he did that. So that's been a bit of a shocker for me, because I really don't like conflict. I really try to make everybody in my life comfortable. And I thought he was doing fine, although my personal physiology has gotten to the point where sex is not a big thing with me anymore. I take a lot of medications that kind of ruin the effect. but I am comfortable with it. I don't mind the fact that I'm not, I still have a very strong imaginary sex drive. I always have, because when I was in school, that's all I could get away with. Because I was the nerd that nobody found attractive or could possibly think of as being attractive.
I find that so hard to feature that like nobody finding you attractive because you are really attractive.
Well, the thing is, I did have some what I call friend girls, because I couldn't possibly call them girlfriends because they almost always had a boyfriend who really, really liked me and I really, really liked them. But it was like, yeah, but I have sex with this other guy. Whatever.
They were girl buddies.
Yeah, they were girl pals. They were,
pals.
Yes,
That's
the
what-
dreaded
they
friend
were- they
zone.
were-
Yes.
They were really good. And
Dreaded?
it's funny, some of them were considered literally unapproachable. They were like considered in the school situation to be like unapproachable goddesses. And my buddy. It's like,
Well, that's the old. No offense, but that's kind of the old gay boyfriend bit.
Yeah,
it's like girls like to hang with them because they're quote unquote less threatening. And because
Yes, he's harmless.
Yeah, and gay guys actually like to go to malls to shop for clothes.
close, yes.
Whoa!
And in her case, she was a threatening one because she was this gorgeous, well-built platinum blonde that everybody would like look at from afar, but never approach.
Right.
And here we are having lunch talking about Disney films. And I'm doing her drawings of her favorite Disney character and stuff. And she's, oh, that's wonderful. It's like,
Okay. Well, that's one way to
Yeah.
connect for sure. You've been doing that now for many, many years with many, many people. Okay. So let's see what our situation is. All
About
right.
15 minutes, according to the schedule, anyway.
What time is it?
Quarter till.
1:45. Okay. So I would like for everybody here to think about a question they would like to ask somebody else here, whether we're speakers or not. And just, we're going to have a chance to kind of, now the person obviously isn't constrained to answer, they might answer. All right, so you get to start because you're our new person here. So go ahead, and you've got your hand up anyway. So why don't you ask your question?
Okay, this is for Cy and Vincent. What has been your secret to success and stability in your relationships? What is your secret for resolving and preventing conflict and cultivating love and acceptance?
Ooh. I wish I could answer that. I will flat out admit I am a difficult person to live with. I am, shall we say, a bit on the volatile side, which is both, rearing and it's nature and nurture. I am naturally from my birth prone to panic attacks. There it is. It just is. So I know I'm not the greatest to get along with at times, but I don't know. We just click. It's something about, it's like our, we talk in Furry Fandom a lot about personas, and, we didn't invent that. That was around, people were creating fantasy versions of themselves in fandom for a long time. I mean, LARPing, it's all about that. But the simplest way I can put it is, from my perspective, our personas get each other. Okay, sometimes more than the human beings do. I confuse him, he confuses me, I confuse myself. But at the end of the day, the mink and the martin just kind of like, yeah.
That's interesting.
I mean, we met each other through his artwork. Before I even ever saw his face, I saw his artwork.
yeah.
And, immediately clicked, because I'm like, that's a pine marten. Someone actually drew a freaking pine marten.
back when nobody had any idea what that was.
Right. And we didn't have YouTube then. And but he'd drawn them with antennas on them. So, you know, I walk up and I say, "Yeah, those here aren't working." He says, "Yeah." And I said, "Why do your pine martins have antenna?" And then he's like, "Good grief, this guy knows what a pine martin is."
And I said, "Well, sit down. Let me explain it to you." So there you go. As far as the long term, I mean, you know, he talks about being volatile. I mean, my dad was Italian, my mother's German. So, you know, I've got the background to be really volatile. I am not a physically strong specimen, but don't get in a fight with me because I will scream you into the ground.
I'll remember that. I won't get into a fight with you.
But and the problem with that is that has worked for me. If that had never worked for me, I would probably be seriously considering this is not a good thing. Having a temper like this is not a good thing. But it has gotten me out of trouble before. So I'm going, this is the last ditch attempt. This is the skunk going, I've had it, I'm gonna spray this sucker. But for the long term, it's tolerant and trying to understand. There have been some long periods of our relationship where Rodney was so into something that I really couldn't interrupt him. And he would even at some point say, "I really shouldn't be into this much. I'm wasting way too much time on it. You know, it's my ADHD that's getting the better of me." And I try to help, but I wouldn't push. I wouldn't tell him what to do. This is something that's kind of a real problem with me, is I cannot handle people telling me what to do. They can say, "Well, this is what needs to be done. Can you handle it?" Or, "We have this thing we want to do. Can you help with it? I have a problem. Can you help me?" No problem. But I cannot handle anyone telling me, "This is what you have to do," or "You have to do this. I told you to do it, do it."
So you don't do that to your partner either.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good answer to how they stayed together all this time.
Yeah.
Now, I want to give everybody a chance for questions.
Okay.
So, Paul, do you have a question of anybody?
Well, I just want to amplify on the question that's already on the floor, because I think that Sai, you started in a direction where Athena and I's relationship works so well, is the fact that she is so darn considerate. We respect each other. You know, we know what each other's likes and dislikes are and what our boundaries are. And whenever she says something when she's upset or she's concentrating on something else, she'll come to me and say, "Oh, gee, Paul, I said such and such. I hope I didn't." You know, she'll immediately try to clean it up, even if I really didn't have any charge on it. The fact that she thought that it was.
Yeah, I've watched her do
She
that.
thought that I might have had charge on it, so she wants to clean it up. And to me, this is the essence of a good relationship: is people who respect and have consideration for each other, their feelings. How do you treat each other is Athena's watchword. And that makes our relationship so smooth. You know, conflict really doesn't arise. I mean, yes, it's true, we have so much in common. There's few aspects of our lives that are in conflict, although, you know, we don't agree on everything, you know. but the fact that, you know, that I'm not going to present her with, you know, with a you know, like, "You got to do this, right?" You know, and it's like, if I say something to her, you know, I see she may be taking it the wrong way, I'll try to clean it up and say, "Hey, look, you know, is you okay with, you know, whatever." So, yeah, that to me, that's the essence of it, is treating each other with decency, respect, and consideration, and appreciating all the things they do for you. I always tell, whenever Athena does something really nice for me, whether it's just cook dinner or, you know, I will shower her with, oh, thank you. That was so wonderful. I really enjoyed it, and
Yes,
we
you've
all,
always been like that, but that's a beautiful
yeah,
thing.
yeah. We all want to be recognized for the efforts that we do. And so I think that has a lot to do with it.
Okay. Do you have a question of anybody, David?
No, not offhand. I'm still trying to get to know everybody so that I can have a good, thoughtful question to ask. But
There are people present who you know pretty well,
yeah, and I'm not sure what questions I would. I mean, I'd love if I was going to ask something, I'd probably ask it of Paul and Athena, but I know enough about them that I'm not sure what to ask.
Okay. So just ask them up to your place next time they're in town. Anyway, okay.
Where are you, David, by the way?
Well, right now I'm a couple miles away, but normally I live up near Lake Arrowhead.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Yeah, he's working on his warehouse in San Fernando. Is that where that is? Huh?
Fillmore, Arleta.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
All right. So, do you have a question to ask anybody,
You first.
Mark?
Oh, I really liked Paul's mention of respect. That is important. Fuzzbutt, how did you end up discovering the fandom, and has it changed your life in a positive way?
Thank you. Yeah, it has. It was a friend of mine who introduced me to the fandom. When I was talking his ear off about Balto and the Lion King, he was like, there's some people you should meet.
Okay. And has it made a difference in your life? The
It has. I've made a lot of good friends. These are people I have common interests with. And so having already had that common interest to talk about, it makes it really easy to break the ice and to meet people. I typically go looking for friends in the fandom because I'm guaranteed to have something in common with them from the get-go. It's richer fishing grounds when looking for mates. Because not only then do we have something in common, but the higher proportion of LGBT people makes it easier to find people who are similarly inclined.
I think that's a really important point. I realized at one point that I literally had no interest in dating anybody that wasn't into science fiction fandom because they simply weren't my species. So, the only place I could look was there. Reading science fiction is okay. At least they're reading science fiction, but being in the fandom means they're even more connected with it for me. So I can see what you're talking about. Do you have any question of anybody?
No, not really. It's been fascinating listening to the discussion that's been going on. Though there's been a lot of things I've learned here today, so definitely appreciative about that. So.
We appreciate your perspective too.
Yeah,
Did
definitely.
I don't even remember. Did I ask a question?
No, I don't
Somebody
think
else?
so. Go ask.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Ask any question.
All right, David.
Yes, sir.
Since you mentioned it, I know that with the state of the world as it's in, with wars and economics and politics and the ridiculous backlash we're facing against all the gains we thought LGBT had made, ... that this, nudism can seem kind of like why are you worried about that thing? But guess what? I am. There have been an awful lot of the gains that nudism had made over quite a period of time that have been rolled back recently. And I find myself considerably worried about that. A lot of beaches closing or changing to clothing required, et cetera, so on and so forth. Just a lot of backlash.
Right.
Do you have in your head a path forward for nudism that you kind of think might help counteract some of this? Because I'm looking for some.
He's a
Not so much anymore. It's gotten to the point where I've kind of laid back and said, well, you know what? I'm not sure what I can do. In the past, I'm still part owner on a nudist website. And one of the focuses that my partner and I were working on was just raising awareness of what it really is, and not what some of the backlash from people trying to exploit what it is. And so I was heavily involved in it from the communication side. And I still think that's the only route that's going to get anywhere, is to people draw the absolute connection between sex and nudism, and that has to be stopped. I mean, obviously I am very sexually positive, but I'm also positive it has no real connection to nudism. And so being in both lifestyles has been both a hindrance and an aid, because I can speak from both sides, and I can say, look, no, I am on both sides of these, and I know they are different. They are not the same thing. But at the same time, people say, well, obviously they're connected because you're in both of them. So, but to go back to the actual question, the main thing is getting the communication and getting people to recognize differences and similarities, and why does nudism have a high propensity for attracting people who are sex positive? Because it isn't that they're connected, it's just that they're already used to being outside the box.
Right. Thank you. I made the observation some time ago that you're not a real nudist until you're the sort of person who would want to take their clothes off to do the vacuuming.
That's me.
Me too, actually.
Right.
And yes, gee, partnering patterns, very interesting. People that are important in my life are dyed-in-the-wool nudists, like my husband, Craig, who's not feeling well enough to come out and join us today, unfortunately. I'd hoped he would, but
He needs rest.
yeah. So, it was touch and go to the last second. Anyway, but I've always identified better with nudists, and of course, I became a nudist because of my first husband being absolutely committed to social nudity too. So, interesting. Okay, I hope everybody has gotten questions answered and asked and so forth, and I'm delighted that you all joined us for this gathering. And Paul, we have it all being recorded on Zoom, so you'll have it in the archives, right?
Yeah, I noticed the little red recording light was on.
Thank you. Okay, so you have been the archivist of so many really important things, including when you brought us Robert Rimmer to attend one of our meetings long after his passing. Thank you. So this is all on recorded, and I think that's really excellent this time, because we've had a wonderful meeting of discovery. So next time we are going to be having a meeting on Moon is a Harsh Mistress, and liberty, and group marriage, and multi-generational group marriage, and so forth. And I hope you'll all join us for that. It will again be on Zoom. We're hoping to go back to being live by July. Thank you all for being with us, and we're going to go ahead and end the meeting, sending hugs your way. Yes?
Hey,
All
take
right,
care.
thank
Thank
you.
you for putting this together, Terry. It was nice to see Cy and Rodney again and get to know a little bit more about Elaine. And always good to see you, David, and nice to meet you, Chris. So
Take care, all. Plaster awaits.
And if you change your mind, the hot tub is hot, David.
I gotta go inspect the plaster now. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.